Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to start talking about mortgages. So you should have a handout to go along with this. So for the definition part, you just have to fill in some of the blank spaces, right? You'll have some of it written down already. Okay. So some definitions here. So the first one at the top of your handout, amortization, just means the gradual elimination of debt. So you have to amortize something, means to take on a debt load and then gradually pay it off. Okay, which we've been talking a bit about with annuities. Okay, the amortization period is the time over which the entire debt will be paid. So for example, if you're going to take out what's called a 30-year mortgage, that means when they're setting it up for you, the intention is that it would take 30 years for you to pay the whole thing off. Okay, an amortization table shows the breakdown of principal paid, payments, interest paid, and the current balance of the loan. So we'll do that a little later on in this note to show how to set one up. Okay. Okay. This brings us to a mortgage. So a mortgage is a loan secured by the value of real estate property. So the main idea being here, right, because it's a big debt, right, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here, is that the way the bank kind of gets a guarantee from you that you'll pay it back is that they technically own the house in a sense, right? When you take out a mortgage on a house, okay, until you have paid that off to the bank is technically the owner. So if for some reason you could no longer pay your mortgage and what they call defaulted on it, right, you can't make your payments, the bank keeps the house and you have to leave. And then the bank can sell it and recoup the money that they would have lost from you. Okay. The mortgage term is the length of the mortgage agreement, okay, which is not necessarily the length of time it will take to pay off the mortgage. So for example, we talked about the amortization period, right? So say the intention is to pay off your mortgage in 30 years. Okay, when you sign a contract at the bank, okay, to determine what interest rate you're going to be paying on that mortgage, they don't guarantee that for the full 30 years, like not usually anyway. They will guarantee it for a shorter period of time, which becomes what your mortgage term is. So for example, maybe you went to the bank and they would be willing to offer you a 3% mortgage, right? Interest rate of 3% for the next 3 years. Or you could say, maybe you want to lock your interest rate in for 5 years, but they'll up it to 3.5%. Okay. Typically, the longer you want to lock in your mortgage term, the higher your interest rate goes. Okay. And we can talk more about why that is when I'm actually there in the class. Okay. But yeah, that's the difference between the mortgage term and the amortization period. And finally, I think you already have this one in your note, right? In Canada, the typical amortization for mortgages is between 20 and 25 years. Okay, I think they do allow up to 30, but I think that's the limit in Canada. Okay, the last little piece here, okay, and this is kind of important for our calculations. Okay, interest is compounded semi-annually. So when we weave this into the TVM solver, we have to keep that in mind. Okay, so we're just going to do a couple examples here. And again, I know I didn't mention earlier, but whoever's running this video, please make sure you're pausing it every now and then to make sure the class can properly copy this into their handout. Okay. So here's example one. Consider purchasing a home worth $250,000. Okay, and the purchaser is going to make a 20% down payment. So first, we're going to determine the amount that we're going to actually mortgage, right? Because we're making a down payment first, that means we don't have to mortgage the whole amount. Okay, so for part A, all we have to do is figure out what's 20% of $250,000. So that's 250,000 times 20%, which is 0.020. Okay, and that comes out to $50,000. So now we'll take that away. from our total. So we're going to pay $50,000 up front as the down payment. So the actual amount to be mortgaged is $200,000. Okay, now there's a little side thing here, and I'll have to look up the exact percent a little bit later. But basically, to get a mortgage, you have to make some kind of a down payment. Okay, I believe the minimum is 5, although it may have changed to 10 recently. I'm not sure. Okay, but yeah, you have to make some kind of a down payment. However, some banks do offer what they call a 0% down payment mortgage. Okay, but you're not actually doing that exactly. What happens in a 0% down payment mortgage is that the bank will loan you a minimum down payment of 5%, and you use that loan to make the down payment, and then you have to pay off your mortgage and the separate loan back to the bank. Okay. It seems kind of silly, but that's basically how banks get around the rule of you have to have a down payment for a mortgage. The reason they want a down payment is because they want you to be serious, right? To show you're really serious about buying a home and that you are able to manage the money and save some so you can make mortgage payments. Okay. So now we're going to determine the monthly payment if the mortgage is at 5% over 20 years. Okay, so we're going to use the TVM solver for this. Okay, so just to write down some of the key things, right? We know that our present value is going to be the amount of the mortgage, which is $200,000. Okay, our interest rate is 5%. Okay, for the TVM solver, you don't have to make any changes to the calculation. Okay, our number of compounds, okay, is going to be 12, right? It's monthly payments usually, times the number of years. This is going to be 20-year mortgage, so it's 240. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the TVM solver. And for this one, we actually have to go into the advanced version, okay, because if we're going to make monthly payments on our mortgage, okay, that's going to be compounded monthly, but the interest rate is compounded semi-annually because that's how it works with Canadian mortgages. So we're going to click on this button that says advanced version because we have a little tweak here now. I have a little more control. So we're going to start with our present value. That's $200,000. Okay, payment box, we're going to leave blank for now. Okay, the future value of our mortgage, well, we want that to be 0, just like we're paying off a debt. So that's 0. Okay, our annual rate, okay, and these boxes are a little confusing. We want it 5% and it stays annually. Okay, this is a 5% interest rate. The periods, okay, there are going to be 240 of those, and that's monthly. And this last thing, this is compounding. That's for interest rate that we had before. That's semi-annually because that's what it is for mortgages. Okay. Now I'll show you what the payment is. So I tap the payment button, and there's what a monthly payment would be: $1,314.25. Okay, again, we kind of ignore the negative there. Okay, but that is the answer to part B. Okay, is that is our monthly payment. Okay, again, part of the reason we have to use the TVM solver here is because the annuity formula that we used the past few days doesn't have the ability to do the 2 different compounds at once. Okay. Okay, so our other example this morning is going to be showing how to build an amortization table to get an idea how that works. So I'm going to be going back and forth a little bit here. Here is what the table looks like. Okay, we'll talk about how the numbers go into this here. Okay, so you notice, right, I've written, right, at the top here, our month is 0. So before we started paying it off, there's the balance. Okay, and for payment, we figured out what the payment was in example 1. So those are all written down here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to get these next few columns in to the table. Okay, so under interest paid, so at the end of 1 month, I have to figure out how much interest was earned on this balance of $200,000. Okay, so we're going to show how that part works by writing out those steps. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what's roughly my interest rate per month. So this is kind of like figuring out the value of I in our annuity formula. Okay, so our interest rate was 5%, which is 0.05. Okay. And we're paying this off monthly. So we're going to divide by 12 to get a rough idea how this is going to work. So 12. Okay, and we get 0.004166666, and so on. Okay, so let's figure out what the interest was on that first month. So I take the current balance, which is 200,000, and I multiply it by that lovely decimal I just got, 0.0416666, and so on. Okay, and we get, okay, I got $833.33. Okay, so let's go back to our table and pencil that in. So $833.33. Okay, so that's how much interest we owed, okay, after 1 month. So when I make this payment, okay, the 1314.25, first it pays off the interest. Then whatever's left over can go against the principal, right? How much I owe on the mortgage. So that's the next thing to figure out. So I'm going to flip back here. Okay, so our next step is to take our payment, which was the 1314.25, and subtract the interest we owed. We owed 833.33. Okay, and we get $480.92. Double check. Yep. Okay. So finally, now that I know how much of the principal is being paid, I'm going to take my balance, 200,000, and just subtract this 480.92. So we had 200,000 minus 480.92. Okay, so the balance remaining on the mortgage is 199,519.08. Okay, that's how much is left on the mortgage at the end of 1 month. Okay, and now I just basically repeat this process over and over again to fill in the rest of the table. Okay. So I'll take my new balance, which was 199,519.08. Okay, I multiply that by that interest rate we had before. Okay, so at the end of this month, the interest owing is 831.33. So I paid off, there's $2 less interest this time, which means my principal paid will go up by $2. So that'll be 482. Thank you. Okay, now I take my balance. Okay, 199, 519.08, and I subtract 482.92. And I get 499, 36, 16. Okay. And we just keep repeating this process over and over again until we get down. Okay, so I invite you to take the next couple minutes and work on it. And I'm going to pause this on my end for a second and then fill in the table, and we'll go from there. Okay, so here's the rest of the table, nicely filled out. So while you're taking those numbers down there, okay, there's a couple little comments here to talk about. So first thing, right, is that it's not moving super fast here, but right, the amount of interest you pay is slowly going down, which means the amount of principal you pay is slowly going up. Okay, right, the first time it went up, the interest went down by $2, then by $2.01, then by $2.02, and by $2.03. Okay, so again, it's not very much, okay, but it is slowly getting bigger. Okay, so early on in a mortgage, you're paying way more interest than principal, right? If you compare those two numbers, it's not double, but there's a lot more interest than principal. Okay, I think about things around 1/3 of the way through the mortgage, it starts to switch, okay, where you start paying off more principal than interest, and then it really starts to go down quickly from there. Okay, so yeah, at the beginning you're paying lots of interest. Okay, in the long run, okay, you do get it paid off. It just might not seem like you're making much progress right now. Okay. So our final thing here, determine the total amount spent on principal and interest in the first 6 months. Okay, so for this, it just means we really have to do the totals, right? So for the interest, right, the total interest paid, I just have to add up this column right here. Okay, and for total principal paid, I just have to add up this column right here. Okay. So when I do that, these are the totals that I get. Okay, so for the interest, okay, almost $5,000 was spent on interest. Okay, and for the principal, okay, a little under $3,000 was spent on principal, which again is what we mentioned, right? At the beginning of a mortgage, you're spending way more on interest than you are against the debt. Okay, but that does sort itself out as you run through the process. Okay, so that's going to be your introduction to mortgages. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of days. So the practice work I'd like you to look at is on page 425, number 1, 3, 5, and 8, parts A, B, and C. Okay, or of course you can work on the assignment that was handed out. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.